All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning. We'll go ahead and get started here. I'm going to assume that you can hear me. So go ahead and start asking your questions there, and we'll start getting them answered. Looks like we have one question to start with today from Paul J. Paul J asks, at the top of the swing, is it okay for the hands to separate a little in order to get a longer backswing? I would say no. You don't want the hands to separate. You want to keep a nice, secure grip. You want to have control of the club the whole time. So if your hands are separating, then you're going to be losing some control of the club, which can lead to some issues coming into impact. So I would say no, you do not want to separate your hands. But if it doesn't affect your impact in any way, you're still getting a good impact, even though you're doing that, and you're getting more club head speed from doing that, because that's the whole point of swinging longer, is to improve your club head speed. So if you're getting more club head speed, then that's completely fine, as long as your impact is staying the same. But just in general, you don't want to do that typically, because it's usually not going to improve your impact. It's usually going to make your impact more more susceptible to issues like chunks and off center strikes and stuff like that. So go ahead and get your questions on here. We'll get them answered. I'll go back to Robert here, who posted this question yesterday. Said, I'm working on forward shaft lean in the move section. My problem is with the driver, I'm hitting low pull hooks. What do I need to do to stop this? So what a low pull hook is basically caused by a face that is too closed, and your face is also closed to your path. So it sounds like your path is probably pretty neutral, but you're closing that club face down too much, and the ball is starting left, and then it's continuing to hook more left. You're going to need to feel like you hold that face open a lot more going through impact. So I got eyelashes on there or something. So the way that you would want to stop that is basically, it sounds like when you're coming through impact, and this is a problem that a lot of people have with the move, is that when you're coming through impact, you're doing the turning of the handle part. So that's that part of the move where we're talking about turning that handle down. So you're coming through impact and you're turning that handle down, but you're not getting forward shaft lean. The turning of the handle down is what gives you a square club face when you have forward shaft lean. If you're turning that handle down, you don't have forward shaft lean, that face is going to be slammed shut. So you can see there, this is coming into impact, turning the handle down with forward shaft lean. Now you see if I don't have forward shaft lean, the face is just shut down. So that's most likely what's going on there. So a couple things need to happen. Either you need to not turn the handle down as much, and depending on your swing and what's going on there, I would either not turn the handle down as much so that you're not shutting that face down, or get more forward shaft lean at impact. I would recommend probably the first one would be the easiest one for you to start out with, and then see if that helps. But most likely you're still kind of flipping the club and turning that handle down, which is going to shut down that face. All right, so Mark T says the ball should be positioned off the left ear or shirt logo. Is that position set up prior to tilting the spine to the right for fluid spine? So it's basically at setup. When you are in your normal position, that's going to be basically, somewhere like this, and that's after you tilt your spine. You don't want to be like this, and that's going to put, if you're setting up totally vertical and then you get in your spine angle, that's going to move, your ball position there. Basically that ball position, that standard ball, it's just a little bit ahead of middle. That's basically where it's at, a little bit ahead of the middle of your stance is basically where that puts that. So, if you're going up and you are setting up and you're getting way tilted away like this, too far tilted away, that's going to put that probably back of the middle of the stance. And if you set up vertical or even leaning toward the target address, that's going to put that further up in your stance. In general, we're just looking at if you're in that good spine tilt position, that's 6 to 8 degrees, straight down from the left ear, left logo on your shirt, that's going to be slightly ahead of the middle of your stance. And that's generally a pretty good ball position for your standard shot. Now, if you're trying to hit a draw, might be easier to put the ball a little bit further back in your stance. If you're trying to hit a fade, might be a little bit easier to put it up in your stance to allow the club to start turning to the left a little bit as it gets to the ball for a right-handed golfer. So really, you just got to test out and see what works best for you. A ball position that is a little bit more forward might be better for others, while a ball position that's a little bit more back might be better for other people. You just got to test it out. There's no set. We can just kind of give you a generality. Straight down from the left ear is generally pretty good, but you may want to go out there and you may find that a ball position that's a little bit further back works a little bit better for you. So Harold W says inside elbow ... I see. He posted. So Harold W says, recently I reviewed a video from Clay on driving where you have your inside, I think he means inside elbow, pointing outward and not towards the target. That helped me. But the question is, should the wrist at the top be bowed like Dustin Johnson? Not that strong though. It's really up to you. In general, so basically what's going on when Dustin Johnson is doing that, what he's doing is the move essentially, but he's doing it at the very, very top of the swing, which is very difficult to do. It's not something that everyone's going to be able to do. I tried it. It doesn't work for me. It hurts my wrist to be able to do that. So generally what we teach in the move course is to actually get this bowing down a little bit in the downswing. That's basically what we're trying to do. But if you can get the club to where it's in this position at the top, and then you don't have to do that in the downswing, that might be easier for you. And if you can do it with your wrists, then more power to you. Then that's completely fine. That's basically what he's doing there. Generally, what we like to see is we like to see a nice flat, at least flat or slightly bowed wrist, and then the downswing just makes it a little bit easier to shot out that club. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't go up to the top of the swing with a cupped wrist. It doesn't mean that you can't be in this kind of position at the top. What that means is that you're just going to have to do more of this in the downswing to get that to happen, and that's a little bit more difficult for some people. Typically, people who have a cupped wrist at the top are, in general, going to struggle with closing the face because they're going to have to do a lot more of that in the downswing. If you're more in this flat position, then it's going to be easier for you to have that kind of position or a slightly bowed wrist position at impact. So it's really, to each their own. There's no set way that you have to do it. It just has to get to that position at impact, and whether you do that before the backswing or in the transition, that's up to you. But generally, you want to do it in those areas there. All right. So, sorry, we got a bunch of questions here jumbled up at once. So Paul Z says Clay recommends starting weight shift forward before finishing the backswing, but when I do this, it feels like I lose my spine swell. Does the weight shift only apply to the lower body? Your whole body is going to be. You can't just shift your lower body and keep your upper body back. Basically, what we're talking about here is you got to get your momentum moving forward. So you're still going to be loading up. I think this is where people get confused with it because they're confusing a weight shift with a pressure shift. So a pressure shift, that is the pressure that you're putting into the ground with your feet. So when we're talking about a pressure, you are building up pressure as you're going up to the top of the swing. It's almost like when you're walking, right? When you're walking, you're taking a step forward, you're putting pressure in your trail foot. You're putting pressure in your back foot as you're pushing off with it. But there's no pressure in your front foot until it gets put on the ground. But your momentum is moving that way while the pressure is moving the opposite way. That's the same thing that's happening in the golf swing. When you're going up to the top of the swing, if you watch any tour player, watch them. You can draw a line. Download the V1 Golf app. You can download some tour models. And what you can do is you can draw a line on the outside of their hip. So from the outside of the ankle to the outside of the hip. And what you can do is you can start that video and you can watch how they'll never cross into that line. And then you'll actually start to see them come off the line and go this way a little bit as they're reaching the top of the swing. So they're going up the top of the swing. They're loading up, loading up, loading up. Trying not to hit my glass board here. They're loading up, and you'll see that they'll actually start moving this way a little bit. And you can see I'm maintaining my tilt. I am angled away from the target. And that way, when I start my downswing, when my arms start to go down, I've got pressure in my lead foot. And now I can push into the ground, and I can really open up. And you can see how my angles are starting to get more angled away as I'm coming in there. And I'm getting in that proper impact position. So it's the step drill on the website is really the best drill to be working on that. If you go to, there's a search engine on the website. It's very, very easy to use. In the upper right-hand corner, it says search this website. Just search the word downswing, and there'll be a video that comes up. It's the third video down. It says how to start the downswing. It's got some yellow lettering in the thumbnail. Clay goes over the step drill in there, and it's going to help you get that proper weight shift feeling, because most people are not starting their downswing or starting their weight shift until after they're starting the arms down, and by that time it's too late. The arms are already racing out in front of the body, and you've already flipped the club and you haven't used your legs at all. So you got to get that momentum moving forward before you start that downswing, before you start the arms going down, and that's going to help you to use the legs more and swing the club much better. All right, so go ahead and get your questions on here. Like I said, I'm on here for another 47 minutes. So if you got a question, go ahead and put it on there, and we'll get it answered. So other than that, you'll get to watch me check my email all day. I'm sure that's no fun. So in the window there where it says the chat with Tatsu Golf instructors, go ahead and click on that and start typing your question. So we got a question from Ernie. So Ernie B says, my right elbow doesn't stay tucked in close to my body in my downswing. Any tips for keeping the elbow in? So you want to make sure that you're shallowing out the club. So a lot of that is from coming down steep. You're coming down steep with the club. You want to get that club to where it's more shallowed out. It's going to be easier to get that elbow coming into your body. So the move course is going to be a good one for you. It could, it's hard for me to say without seeing your swing, but it could also be a weight shift issue. That's kind of like what I was just talking about. If you're starting down with the arms before you're getting to your lead side, before you're getting pressure in your lead foot, and before you're getting momentum to your lead side, then what's going to happen is you're typically going to swing all arms in the downswing. And when you swing all arms, you typically are going to come down steep, and that elbow comes away from your body to make that happen. So like I said, it's hard for me to do that to know exactly what's going on in your swing without seeing it. And I do offer an unlimited swing review program. I think I do have a couple spots available. If you want to check it out, you can click the get a review at the top of the page, or I think there's another link that'll take you to it as well. But basically, you'll want to work on that weight shift drill that I was just talking about. If you just search the word downswing on the website, if you don't have that proper weight shift, if you're not feeling that pressure in your lead foot before you start that downswing, then you'll want to work on that, and that's going to help you to get your lower body involved, and that's going to make it a lot easier to shallow out the club and to swing more from the inside, because the elbow coming out away from the body is a product of coming down steep and usually just using your upper body. If you do have a good weight shift, then I'd be working on the move course, which the move is a combination of shallowing out the club, which if you watch, if I shallow out the club, see what happens to my elbow. I'm shallowing out the club. You're most likely kind of in this area instead of that area. Shallowing out the club, and then also getting that club face to square earlier in the swing so that you can come into contact with forward shaft lean and a square club face. So I'd be looking at the move course. To get to the move course, very, very easy. Click on the house icon, scroll down where it says Top Speed Golf System courses, and about halfway down on that list, you'll see the move course there. So that's what I'd recommend to check out. So David C says, "Hey Q, what do you think about dressing the ball with the club face slightly closed to compensate for forward shaft lean at impact?" I will say this: anything you do at address, it has to be to improve at what's going on at contact. So setting up with a closed club face, that's not going to necessarily improve your forward shaft lean. But if it helps you get forward shaft lean, then more power to you. I generally just like to set up to the golf ball with a square club face and relax address position. I want to be comfortable. I want to be in a comfortable state to where I can start the swing smoothly. That's what I'm looking for in an address. But hey, if you set up to the face with the face closed and it gives you a better impact, then that's what you should do. Just because you set up with a closed club face doesn't mean that you're going to get forward shaft lean, though, if that makes sense. So that's what I would be looking at. Everything that you do with your setup, it has to be to improve what's going on at contact. Impact's the only thing that matters. So that's what you have to look at. Just because you set up a certain way doesn't mean a certain thing's going to happen at impact. But if you do something at address that helps you get a better impact, then who am I to tell you that it's wrong, right? So you do what works for you. We're talking about, the Top Speed Golf system is about universal truths. These are the things that all tour players do to get you in the right positions or to hit the ball the best. So everything in between is basically like your own personal preference swing signature. So we're talking about, the 5 pieces of the Top Speed Golf system and the move. Those are the things that are the most important things that you should be looking after. So everything in between is really just personal preference. And if it helps you get better contact, then that is what you should do. But if it doesn't, then it's kind of a waste of time to do it, essentially. All right. So Tony S says, Quentin, not a question, just a comment to pass on to Clay. His email showing us the must-dos with irons is one of the best videos I've seen that explains the iron swing. I'm back to swinging again, so we'll be in touch with you via email. So I haven't seen the video. I've actually been on vacation for the last few days, so I haven't seen the video, but I'll have to check it out and see what I think of it. So Jeffrey J says, I have lower back pain, so looking for drills that won't aggravate the problem while working on spine stability. Thanks. If you have lower back pain, you need to go see a doctor. I'm not going to be able to give you any kind of advice to help with your lower back. I'm not qualified for that. You're just going to need to go see a doctor. I know it's no fun. I don't like going to the doctor either, but if you have lower back pain, that's just something you're going to need to talk to your doctor about. I'm just not qualified to help you with that. So Paul Z says, can you demonstrate putting posture on the lead foot during the downswing? Can you demonstrate putting pressure on the lead foot during the downswing? Sure. So that's basically, what we were looking at a minute ago is I'm coming. So as I talked about a minute ago, I was talking about putting a line on the outside of your hip, on the outside of your ankle. If you go look at tour players, what you're going to see is that as they're going up to the top, they're actually their momentum is moving forward. So their hips are starting to move forward. Their whole body is basically moving forward. Now, I'm still in my spine angle, but I'm moving forward like this is basically what's happening. And as I'm getting pressure on that lead foot, see, now I'm getting pressure in that lead foot. Now I can start that downswing, and I have pressure in that lead foot that's going to allow me to open my body and get everything working through properly. The best drill for that is going to be that step drill that I talked about earlier. To get to that drill, just click in that search window, search the word downswing. It's a video that's called How to Start the Downswing. This step drill is in many videos on the website, by the way. It's in the Stop Chunking and Topping section. It's in the 20-minute distance fix. It's in several other videos. But the one that I really like, where I think Clay shows it the best, is in that How to Start the Downswing video. So go and work on that drill. That's what's really going to – it's a little bit of a tough drill to get at first, just because there is some coordination that goes along with it. If you're not used to kind of starting forward, moving forward, and completing your backswing at the same time, it's a little bit like tapping your head and rubbing your belly or something like that. It's basically kind of like that feeling because you're going this way, but you're going that way. So it's kind of that feeling, that a lot of people aren't really used to. So it just takes some time to get used to the feeling of it. But once you do, it's much easier to get those legs involved, to get the body. If you're really having a lot of trouble getting the hips rotated open, usually that has a lot to do with how the club is positioned, at the top, whether you're coming down steep. But it also can, if you're coming down shallow, it can also have a lot to do with the legs or a combination of the two. So, you want to get that weight shift working properly and, getting that. Don't confuse pressure shift with weight shift. You're not going to feel that pressure in the lead foot until you start moving down, but the momentum is going to start moving forward. It's just like walking. That's why that step drill is really good, because it's like taking a step, right? It's like walking forward. You're putting pressure in your trail foot while your momentum's moving forward. And that's the same thing that's happening in the golf swing. All right. So John T says, do you use forward shaft lean prior to making a putting stroke? It looks like I see tour players doing that on television. So some people do. Some people, I prefer to have a little bit more or a little bit of forward shaft lean with the putter at address and kind of basically just kind of holding that. But some people have the shaft straight up and down. Some people have a lot more forward shaft lean. It's just a matter of whatever is the best that works for you. But in general, I like to have a little bit of forward shaft lean at address. And the reason for that is just makes it a little bit more stable, because the force, which is the hands, your hands putting the force into the handle here, is leading the mass, which is the club head, which is going to give you a little bit more stability. So if you think about, pushing something instead of pulling something, if you're pushing something, meaning the force is behind the mass, it's a little bit unstable, right? Whereas if you're pulling something, it's just going to fall right in line. The force is leading the mass. That whatever that is going to fall right in line with you. So you can almost look at it as having a push cart or a pull cart, right? If you have a push cart, sometimes, pushing that up a hill, it's a little bit harder to do because it's a little bit more unstable. The mass is in front of the force. But pulling it up the hill a lot of times is a lot easier because it's just falling in line with you. And that's the same way that forward shaft lean works. So I prefer to have a little bit of forward shaft lean with the putter. Maybe just having the hands an inch or two forward of your, of the golf ball or of the putter head. And that's going to allow you to get that, get that nice stable putting stroke. But, it doesn't mean that you can't have a putting stroke where you don't have forward shaft lean. Doesn't mean you can't have a putting stroke where you have a ton of forward shaft lean. There's lots you're going to see on tour. You're going to see a lot of different kind of putting strokes. So it's personal preference there, but just the physics part of it, it's good to have just a little bit there, I think for sure. So yeah, go ahead. John T says, good visual in your answer. Thanks. No problem. Glad I could help. So yeah, go ahead. And if you got more questions, go ahead and post them on there and I'll get them answered for you. So Stephen N says, Q, all things equal, do you think a steeper swing promotes higher ball flight or a flatter swing to promote higher ball flight? It really just depends. You can have a high ball flight with a steep swing, or a flatter swing. So a lot of times it's really about how you delivering the clubs to the golf ball. So if you have a very steep swing, and I'm not sure what you mean by steep, I think you mean by like more of a vertical swing. So either swing is going to can give you any kind of ball flight. It's more about, like I said, how you deliver the club to the golf ball. So if you're swinging more vertical, meaning you're going up more higher, what you have to do is you have to get that club to shallow out in the downswing. So that's kind of one of the pitfalls to it, is a lot of times it's harder to get that club to shallow out in the downswing the more vertical you are. But the more speed you'll usually be able to get, because you're creating more space in time to be able to accelerate the club. So if you can get these hands nice and high and shallow out the club, that's really the best of both worlds. That's pretty much what all the best players in the world are doing. So you're looking at Rory, You're looking at Adam Scott. You're looking at Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth. You're looking at all these guys. They all have high hands, and then they shallow out the club in the downswing. And they can all hit the ball high when they want to, and they can all hit it low when they want to. The thing that gives you, that really controls the height of the golf ball is forward shaftling. That's the biggest thing that has to do with that. So if you are flipping the club, you're going to have a lot more higher ball flight. Also, the other thing that controls high ball flight is how hard you hit it. If you have a lot of club head speed, you're going to hit the ball higher typically than someone who doesn't have a lot of club head speed. So it's really, you can have a high ball flight with either one. If you're looking for a higher ball flight, because you don't want to start flipping the club necessarily. But what I would look at is your compression line. Because your angle of attack may be really down on the golf ball. If you're hitting it really, really low, you're not getting it high enough. So I'd be looking at your compression line, which is the line that goes up from your lead shoulder, your lead hip, and your lead ankle. If that's kind of vertical or leaning toward the target, you're typically going to be chopping down into the golf ball. You're going to have a steeper angle of attack, which is going to promote a lower ball flight. So, and also more spin. So if that's what's going on, you may want to feel like you're a little bit more angled away, slightly angled away from the target. And that's going to allow you to get that club to release and get that a little bit higher ball flight. So if that's what's going on. Also, what I mentioned earlier was if you have lower club head speed, raising that club head speed will help you to get higher ball flight as well. So that's why I find a lot of times a lot of people complain about not getting the ball up high enough, and mainly it's just because they don't have enough club head speed. So working on getting some more club head speed, replacing those mid to upper irons with hybrids that can also help as well, because those have a lower center of gravity and will help you to get the ball up in the air. So if you have a low club head speed, you probably shouldn't be carrying a 3, 4, 5 iron. Probably need to have hybrids to help you get the ball up in the air a little bit better. All right. So Paul Z says, since the downswing happens so fast, I find it hard to make the 2-part of the move happen naturally. Any tips? It's just a matter of you just got to train it. This is basically how swing changes work. The best way to do it is to really, really exaggerate the movement, go as slow as possible at first, and pause at key checkpoints. So that's doing the first drill, the first big drill in the move where you're turning that handle down. You're coming down to about right here, and you're turning that handle down. You're pausing right there, and then you're continuing to impact. You're pausing at all these key checkpoints. It takes time to do this. I think a lot of people feel like, I'm not saying that that's you, Paul, but I think a lot of people feel like it just takes, a couple drills and boom, you're going to be doing it. But it just doesn't work that way. It takes a lot of, when we talk about putting in all these repetitions, we're not just saying that because we want to keep you around forever because you got to do all these repetitions. That's because it takes a lot of time and effort to be able to do that. They say you can't ever get rid of a habit. You can only create a new habit that overcomes the old one. So if you have a habit of coming down steep, you have to develop a habit of getting the club to shallow out, and it takes time to do that. So my best advice would be, number one, go as slow as you have to go and exaggerate everything as much as possible. Pause at key checkpoints. Once you start feeling comfortable with that, start doing it in some slow, really, really slow, fluid practice swings. Get it to where you can do it in a fluid practice swing as slow as you have to go. And let's say that starts out and it's at 20% speed, 25% speed, right? Well, your goal next time when you work on that is just to get faster than 25% speed and get it to where you can do it in a practice swing all the way up to 100% speed. Honestly, if you can't do it in a practice swing, you have little to no chance of doing it with a golf ball there. So you got to get it in a practice swing first. Got to be able to do it there. And then once you get it there, maybe try clipping a tee, getting it there. And then once you get it there, then try hitting a golf ball. I think a lot of people just they do a drill and then they just expect to be able to hit the golf ball in that way. It just doesn't work that way. I always equate it to learning how to type. You have to train the brain to be able to do that. So when you were first learning how to type, you probably had to look at the keyboard, and you were pointing and pecking, and you didn't know where any of the keys were, but you were just kind of all over the place, and it took you forever to even type a word. Well, eventually you started to figure out and memorize. You built the neural pathways. You figured out that where each key was, and you memorized it. So you got faster, but you were still pointing and pecking. And then eventually you learned how to put the hands on the keyboard, and you figured out what each finger did. And then eventually you got faster with that, and with the movements that you have to do with your fingers. And then eventually you got to where you didn't have to look at the keyboard at all, and you could just look at the screen, and you were typing, and you weren't even thinking of in terms of individual letters. You were thinking in terms of whole words and sentences, and you would just type it out. You would just type out a word without any thought at all. And that's what it's like to change something in your golf swing. It takes time. You have to build the neural pathways in the brain. You got to think about the first time that you even played golf. You probably couldn't hardly hit the ball at all, and it took time to where you could even start to hit it solid. So it's the same thing. Whenever you're changing something that you're not comfortable with, you're doing something that you're not comfortable with in the golf swing, it takes time and repetition to get there. So the key is just enjoy the journey. It's part of the process. Exaggerate everything as much as you can. Try to get it in a practice swing first, and then move your way up to the golf ball. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't go play golf and play, and you, because you're going through a swing change or anything like that. It means you need to keep your practice tee and your first tee separate. I have to actually have a student right now that told me, well, I can't have two golf swings. Well, it's not two golf swings. It's the swing. It's not technically two golf swings. You are practicing doing something, changing something in your golf swing right now. And whatever you're doing in your practice tee just has to subconsciously make its way into your golf swing on the golf course. So you still have the one swing that you're using. It's just that you're trying to change that swing to be a basically an improved model of it. So just go out there when you're playing, just be confident in the swing that you're using, and focus on impact and not so much what you're doing with your body. When you go to the practice tee, then focus on how your body is moving and how you can get that to change your impact. So that's going to be the best advice for you. And again, I have an unlimited swing review program where I can take you through that and give you step-by-step instructions along the way to help you with that. So if you're interested, like I said, get a review at the top of the page, or you can also click that link. All right, so Robert Yu says, while getting to the top of the backswing, the forward foot heel comes off the ground for improved hip rotation, but the weight shift and replanting of the heel is no longer square, but rotated clockwise. Left-handed swing. All right, now I'm going to get all backwards here. Essentially starting to spin out over rotation. What drills can be done staying square to the target and maintain the stored coil or torque, not spinning out. So if you're not allowing your legs to kind of open up, you're going to be restricting your rotation. So there isn't anything you need to do. That's completely fine to have your foot open up. Look at, and I got to make sure which, so you're talking about the forward foot. So yeah, that should open up. If you look at basically go and look at a bunch of tour player swings, what you're going to see is as they're coming into impact, this lead foot here, you're going to see that it's opening up, or you're going to see that it's actually, a lot of times it's off the ground and opening up. Look at Bubba Watson. He comes down, and with his driver, you're going to see him, he pushes off the ground so much that he actually comes off the ground. And when he comes down, his foot is pointed toward the target. It's not spinning out. It's allowing him to rotate his body open. So what you're doing, it sounds like it's completely fine, and it's not something that I would really concern myself with. One thing I wanted to mention here is that everything that you do in your swing, it has to be to improve what's going on at impact. So I think what a lot of people do is they hear something, or they, for some reason, they think something is wrong just in the way that they're doing things, and they just think, oh, I've got to get that fixed. But you have to think about your impact and what that's going to do to your impact. So everything that we talk about in the top speed golf system and the move and the 20-minute distance fix course, these are all things to help improve your impact. Stable fluid spine, that's to help you get more of a center face contact. That's to help you get that club working down on plane. That's to help you get good ball first contact. It's to help you, hit the club, hit the ball with a square club face. The shoulder turn, the power turn, that's to help you get more speed. That's to hit the ball further at impact. The lag, same kind of thing. That's to help you to get forward shaft lean. It's to help you to get more speed. It's to help you get the club face, more square, consistently square at impact. You look at the compression line, right? That's to help you with your ground contact. That's to help you with your angle of attack and get that angle of attack coming in. That's to help you with your forward shaft lean, to help you get that club releasing more out in front. All of these things that we talk about in the top speed golf system, the move, the 20-minute distance fix, these are all things to improve what's going on at impact. So a lot of people, the left arm is a big one. That's one I hear all the time. People come to me and they say, I've been really working on trying to keep my left arm straight. And I my question is, why? Why are you doing that? And what I found with the left arm is that, there's a happy medium, right? There, you can definitely bend your arm too much, and that can cause some issues at the top of the swing. But in general, having your arm like that is not a problem. That's not an issue whatsoever. And people work really, really hard to get that to be straightened out. Well, really, it's kind of a waste of time. You could have taken that time to work on some of the pieces of the top speed golf system, or worked on your club head speed, and you would have improved your game a lot more. A lot of times you don't improve your game at all just by working on getting that lead arm straight. I found that it usually straightens out in the downswing. And even if it doesn't, it's still not an issue. You look at Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Lee Westwood, they all have bent lead arms at impact, which is completely fine. So you have to look at what's going on at impact and see what that's going on. So if you were to try to keep your foot completely square at impact, it could actually make your impact worse, because it could restrict your hips to be opening up as you're coming into impact, which wouldn't allow you to have all the speed and release that club out in front, which would add loft to the face, usually cause you to flip, and now you have that ballooning high shot instead of a nice penetrating compressed shot. So it sounds like that foot spinning out and opening up as you're coming into impact, that is completely fine. You look at every single tour player, you're going to see some version of that in their swing. So I wouldn't be trying to fix that, or not. That's not even the right words. I wouldn't be trying to change that. So Robert Yu again says, should the head stay behind the ball through impact while weight shift moving forward? Yeah. So your head's typically it's going to be, your nose is going to be pretty much either, it depends on the kind of shot that you're hitting. So if you're trying to hit like kind of a low penetrating kind of shot, then your nose might be more down right on top of the golf ball, where your compression line's more vertical. But if you're trying to hit kind of a standard stock shot where you are basically, your compression line is maybe a couple degrees angled away, your nose is going to be just slightly behind the golf ball typically. So you're coming, and that's with an iron shot. Now with a driver, your whole head's typically going to be behind the golf ball. But yeah, you're here and you're shifting forward. Your body's shifting forward, but your head is only moving a little bit forward, and it's still a little bit behind the golf ball as you're coming into impact. So the way that you're stopping from sliding is as you're getting pressure in your lead foot, you are pushing into the ground, and that's rotating my hip back and out of the way. I'm not doing this. I'm getting that pressure in my lead foot, and then I'm opening up my body so that I can come into impact and let this club release out in front. So the head isn't staying completely still. It is moving a little bit forward, but it usually is going to be a little bit behind the golf ball if you're trying to hit kind of a standard shot. If you are hitting kind of a knockdown, trying to hit down steeply into the golf ball, which in some situations you might want to do that. Your head might be more on top of the golf ball, even slightly forward of it. All right. So Mark T says, when hitting into the wind, should I be doing anything beyond the normal swing with forward shaft lean to keep the ball flight down? So hitting into the wind, number one, I would take extra club and I would choke up on the club and I would not swing as hard, because what kills your golf ball into the wind is spin. So adding a lot more spin is going to make the ball balloon up, and it's not going to go anywhere. And it's going to be harder to control. So you want to get that spin down as much as you can. So one way to do that is to use less loft. So that's clubbing up. So if you would typically hit an 8-iron, it might be better to hit a 7 or a 6-iron. Maybe a 6-iron would be good, because that's going to help you take loft off the club. And then choking up on the club a little bit will do a couple things. One, it will give you more control of the club. And two, it will allow you to hit the ball with less speed. The other thing that gives the ball spin is speed. So speed and loft are typically the things that give the ball speed. The other thing is hitting the ball higher on the face. You might be in a situation where you can kind of control that. If the ball is really low, it's on the fairway, it's going to be tough to get that strike really, really high on the face. But let's say you're in the rough and you're just kind of intermediate rough, and the ball is just kind of sitting up on top of the grass. It'd be better to have it more in the center of the club face instead of lower on the club face, because the lower it is on the club face, the more spin that you're going to have as well due to gearing. You're going to have vertical gearing there, and the ball is going to kind of want to crawl up the face, and you're going to end up with more spin. So those are the things that I would do. When you're hitting into a brisk wind, I would use 1 or 2 extra clubs. I would choke up on the club, and I'd try to hit the shot, if at all possible, more in the center of the face to take off some of that spin. And that's going to help you control it a little bit more. But that'd be something I would go practice at the range. Get comfortable with that, and see how the ball kind of reacts and see how far it goes into certain winds and things like that. It's just going to take practice to understand and be able to control it. But that's going to help you the most. If you're hitting the one thing that I see a lot of people do, which is the opposite of what you should do into the wind, is they'll take basically the same club. So let's say you hit an 8-iron, 150 yards, and you're into a 10-mile-per-hour wind. A lot of times what I see people do is they'll take an 8, or maybe they'll club up and they'll use a 7-iron, and they'll just try to hit it really hard. Well, the problem with that is that the harder your swing, the more spin there's going to be. And because you're not clubbing up to a 6-iron or maybe even a 5-iron, you're not taking more loft off. So now you have all that loft in that spin, and that's just going to work against you, and it's just going to make the ball spin and balloon even worse. So like I said, hitting into the wind, take some extra club, choke up on the club to give you a little bit more control and to take off some speed, and try to hit the ball in the center of the face if at all possible. If not possible, understand that if it's in a tightly mown fairway and you basically have to hit it kind of on the bottom 3 grooves there, that's just the best that you're going to be able to do. Then understand that it will have a little bit more spin. It may balloon a little bit on you. So taking a little bit extra club there may help. It might even be better to take a 3/4 swing. Club up a lot more, take a 3/4 swing, and keep that spin off there, and that may even help you get through the wind a little bit more. So take those keys in mind. It should help you hitting into the wind. So Stephen N says, how important is a divot with irons? That's a good question. It's fairly important. One thing to keep in mind is that with divots, your turf is going to make a difference. So if you're playing in very hard and dry conditions, you're probably not going to take much of a divot. But if you're playing in very plush and wet conditions, you're going to take more of a divot. So all things equal, the club's going to tear through that turf a lot more easily unless it's hard and dry. So keep that in mind. You're not always going to have a perfectly dollar bill size divot if you're playing in really dry conditions, and you might have a much bigger divot if you're playing in really wet conditions. So basically, what does taking a divot mean? Taking a divot means that you're getting, as long as you're getting it after the golf ball, is that you're hitting down into the turf and then up out of it. So if you're getting that ball first, it just makes it a lot easier to get ball first contact if you hit the ball first and then the ground. If you try to pick the ball, so let's say you're coming down and you're not taking any divot at all and you're just kind of sweeping it off the turf. Well, one, if you are hitting off of fairways that aren't real plush and they're very tightly mown, that's what we have a lot here in Florida. If you're playing in fairways like that and you're picking the ball off the ground, you're typically always going to hit thin shots. And as I talked about earlier with the vertical gearing, is you're going to have a lot more spin on those shots, and they're just not going to go as far as a normal shot. Now, if you're playing out of fairways that are really, really plush, the ball sits up on top of the grass like it's on a tee, you can pick the ball all day in fairways like that, because you'll be able to get the sweet spot of the club on the golf ball. But a lot of times, if you're not taking a divot, it's usually because you are flipping the club. Because what happens is that if I'm coming down and I'm flipping the club through impact, what's happening is this club is coming into the golf ball very, very level with the turf. So when that happens, your only good shots are going to be picked shots right off the top of the turf. And you can keep in mind that your margin for error is a lot more slim there when you're doing that. So what I'd recommend doing is being able to take a little bit of a divot, a dollar bill size divot, just kind of in normal playing condition. That's about perfect. And that's kind of with a 7-iron. And again, the longer your clubs, the smaller your divots are going to be as well. So a 3-wood is typically going to be not much of a divot unless it's on wet playing conditions. So it's kind of a broad subject that you're talking about there. With wedges, I would say divots are the most important. You're going to need to be coming down more steeply into those shots, and to be able to get that ball first contact and be able to get some good spin on the golf ball. But if you're flipping, then you probably won't be able to take a divot because the club is coming in too shallow to be able to take a divot. You'll have to pick it off the turf. So if you take a divot and you're flipping, then most likely what you're going to be doing is you're going to be hitting the ground before the golf ball, which obviously you don't want to do. So if you're having trouble with divots, it's most likely because you're flipping, and you're probably going to want to work through the move course, which is going to help you to get that club shallowing out, because most of the time people flip because they're coming down steep in the downswing. So there's 2 reasons typically why people flip. One is because they come down steep in the downswing and they have to stand up to get that club to come back down on plane. And what ends up happening is they get that flip through impact. The club comes through very, very level with the turf. The other thing is that how people are used to squaring up the face. A lot of people are used to squaring up the face by really pushing through with that trail of hand. This feels very, very powerful for a lot of people. This feels weak, and that feels powerful. So that's why a lot of people square the club face in that way. So if you think about it, that's more about the trail hand. So as you're coming into impact, this feels weak for a lot of people, but this is how almost every single tour player, well, really pretty much every single tour player comes into impact. That trail hand is in that bent back position. But what you see with a lot of amateurs, as they come through impact, it's that the trail hand is pretty much flat at impact. They're pushing that club through and flipping it. And that's because that's how they're used to squaring up the face. That feels more powerful to them. And they don't realize that de-lofting the face is actually more powerful, even though it feels less powerful in the hands. So that's going to be the move course. Working through the move course is going to help you with both of those things. 1, the shallowing of the club, and 2, the squaring of the club face earlier, which gets that trail hand in that bent back position as you're coming into impact. There's also the pet the grass drill. It's really good from the straight line release course. And what we're talking about there is coming into impact and petting the grass with the fingers as you're going through. That's the feeling that you want to have, that you're petting the grass as you're coming through that. And that's with both hands. You can do it with the left hand. With the lead hand, you're coming in, you're petting the grass with the back of your fingers. The trail hand, you're coming in, petting the grass with the tips of your fingers there. So definitely check out the move course. To get to the move course, very, very easy. Click the house icon, scroll down to the top, speak all system courses, and get working through the drills there. So let me get a drink real quick. So Harold W says, on occasion, I hit the ground with my driver, causing the face to close or open. What is a good drill to prevent that? I'm 6'4" and bent over too far. So most likely what's going on is you're not getting a good weight shift to your lead side. You're probably hanging back on your back foot and bouncing that club off the ground. So that step drill, the sumo step drill, that'd be a really good one for you. If you go to the 20-minute distance fix course, you go to the instruction tab, top of the screen, 20-minute distance fix, work on that sumo step drill. It's in week 1 material. That's going to help you get to your lead side and keep you from holding, hanging back, and that's going to allow you to get that ball first contact there. So definitely that's going to help you out quite a bit. John T says, slow becomes smooth, smooth becomes fast. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. I agree with that for sure. Yeah, once you start understanding the movements and getting comfortable with it, and you're doing it, smoothly at first, eventually you're going to get used to that and more comfortable with it, and it's going to become a lot faster. So Michael H says, I have 2 questions. So we'll get to those in a minute here. But David C says, what swing thought eliminates popping up the ball with the driver, chunky, and iron? So if you are popping up a ball, and David, it's hard for me to know without seeing your swing, but almost all the time when I see people popping up their driver, it's because they are sliding forward and hitting down on the golf ball. So with the driver, we want to be hitting up on the golf ball. So, and that's so that we can get a higher launch and lower spinning shot. That's basically your biggest difference between hitting an iron and hitting your driver, is that you're hitting up on the driver and down on the iron. So what you want to be doing is you want to feel like you're more angled away as you're coming out. I'd be checking your compression line. So your compression line is the line that goes up from your lead shoulder, ankle to your hip to ankle. And at impact, you want that line to be slightly angled away from the target. With the driver, it can be even more than that. I see a lot of tour players that are in that 5 to 10 degrees angled away range. We talk about a couple degrees. That's mainly for irons, but for a driver, you can be a little bit more. And the reason for that is it promotes a more upward angle of attack on the golf ball. So make sure that you're getting to your lead side and you're using that momentum and you're pushing into the ground and you're getting angled away with your compression line as you're coming in there. And that's going to help you to hit up on the golf ball. So a lot of times, if you are popping up the ball, it's because you're swinging down on the golf ball and that club is coming down and the ball is right here. So it's being popped up off the crown. So I'd be looking at that for sure. So Michael's 2 questions here. So Michael H says, first, I'm struggling to make solid contact. What is the best lesson I should be watching now? Stable fluid spine, still seem to be hitting very thin and even whiffing on the ball. So I'd just be focusing on, it really just depends. It's hard to say. Michael, I don't know what your skill level is, but if you're kind of a beginner, I would really just focus on hitting the golf ball and not worry about your stable fluid spine or anything like that. Just focus on hitting the ball in general. Now, if you're not a beginner and playing golf for a long time, then yes, the stable fluid spine, you're most likely kind of just moving all over the place, which makes it a lot more difficult to hit shots. So yes, the stable fluid spine is going to be where you want to stick to. That's going to help you to hit the ball more in the center of the face. But I'd be taking a look at and seeing if there's a consistency there. You say it's constantly thin shots. Thin shots are usually due to an early release. So that could be the move course you may want to work on. If you're always hitting the ball thin, then that's most likely because you're flipping the club, and the move course is most likely what's going to help you with that the most. I would need to see your swing for sure to know exactly what's going on, but just based on what I know and what I've seen and just the tip, it's a good chance that if the thin shots is what you're always doing, you're most likely flipping the club, and the move is going to be the thing that helps you with that the most. But if it's kind of all over the place, then the stable fluid spine, you're most likely kind of moving all over the place with your spine, which is going to make it more difficult to hit the ball in the center of the face. So you're probably going to want to work on that. So Michael H. goes on to say, second, in order to maintain consistency, should I be practicing with the same club every session, currently using 7 iron? No, I mean, I would switch it up. I'd use all your clubs. It doesn't make that much of a difference, but in general, I probably use all your clubs. You know, use your 8 iron, sometimes your 7 iron, 6 iron, 5 iron, whatever you want to do. It's completely up to you. It's really not going to make much of a difference. But you know, you can practice with the same club every single time as well. You're still going to be able to translate that to your 8 iron or something like that, or your 9 iron or your 4 iron or whatever you have. So it's not, you're going to be doing the same thing with all the clubs. So Robert Yu says, can you demonstrate a release of the putter head without breaking of the wrists, with the shoulders rocking? How do you have a very soft touch, for fast greens while only using shoulder rocking motion? Ricky Fowler seems really to maintain the V with the arms, and has a very soft touch. So part of it is just practice. I mean, these guys are out there practicing a ton. It's just something you got to go practice and get a feel for it. I mean, if you're wanting to work on kind of the release of the putter head, a good drill to do is to put, you won't be able to, is if you have two golf, I don't know if I'll be able to do that with this putter, but we'll give it a try. So basically have two balls on the ground here, side by side. And then you'll want to putt these and try to hit them both at the same time. So I didn't really release the putter there very good. You see how the inside ball actually went a little bit further than the outside ball? You want the outside ball to go a little bit further than the inside ball, because that means that you're coming in with a nice square face and that putter head is releasing. So I didn't get the putter to release very good on that one. So I've been going out and working on that, trying to take some strokes like that and try to get the outside ball to go a little bit further. You want them to basically go in the same direction, but you want that outside ball, the one that's lined up more on the toe, to go a little bit further. That's going to tell you that you're getting that putter head released. If they're going in different directions, then that means that you're not really squaring up the club face. So you want to get those in the same direction and have the outside ball go a little bit further than the inside ball, and that's going to tell you that you're releasing the club properly. So some good feelings to have with that is just to feel like your legs are completely solid, that you're not rocking or anything like that. If you keep your legs completely solid, it makes it a lot easier just to kind of use your shoulders and your arms and everything to putt with the ball. So I try to feel like your legs are in cement and they're just not moving at all. And if you do that, it makes things a lot easier. So work on that putter release drill. I think you can actually find that drill on the website. If you just search putter release, and you'll find that drill. But as far as the soft touch and all that stuff is concerned, that's all from practice. That's all developed through lots and lots of practice. So I'd be working through our Top Speed Golf putting system and getting tons and tons of practice in doing that, and working on, using, rocking the shoulders and grooving that stroke. Work through that system, and that will really help you with that. So Leland T says, why don't you have an app? A pain to keep logging in all the time. So we don't have an app right now. You're exactly right. I think it'd be great if we did have one. It's something that we've thought about for sure, and we hope to have one in the future. If you're having trouble, if you're having to log in every time, if you tell it to remember you, it will remember you, but you have to have cookies turned on and enabled on your phone there, and you have to have it to where it doesn't clear them out all the time. So a lot of people, they'll message us and say, hey, it doesn't work. It keeps making me log in. It has to do with your browser settings. So you want to get your browser set up to where it's not constantly cleaning out your cookies, because every time it cleans out your cookies, you're going to have to log in. It's not going to remember your login information. So make sure your cookies are enabled and they're not getting cleaned out all the time, and you won't have to log in. So Mauricio R says, shall I have some momentum in my arms close to reaching the top of the backswing, or should they be as slow as possible? So having some momentum in the arms is good because it's going to help. It's going to create more kinetic energy that's going to help you to swing, have more energy in the downswing. So yeah, that's not something that's really getting out in the weeds, right? That's getting way out in the woods. That's not something that you really, if you are nailing all the pieces of the top speed golf system plus the move, plus your club head speed is way up there, which I would, maybe that doesn't apply to you, Mauricio, but I would say 99.999% of members on the website, including myself and Clay and Robin, we're not all doing those things. So until we are doing all those things, what you're talking about here, it doesn't matter. It's not something that you would even think about. It's a good question, but when I'm just giving you some advice that until you are nailing all 5 pieces of the top speed golf system plus the move plus your club head speed is as high as you can get it, I wouldn't even be thinking about this kind of stuff because it's not. It's really it's basically that 5% of stuff that's just not that important. It's not one of the universal truths. There's going to be some tour players that are much slower as they're going up to the top, and there's going to be some players that are very very quick moving up to the top, like a John Ram. He's very quick, uses a lot of kinetic energy to create speed in the downswing. It's part of the reason why he's able to have a shorter swing and still have a lot of a club head speed. But you see people like Matsuyama, for example, Hideki Matsuyama. He has very very slow, deliberate at the top, but is still an excellent player. So you just have to use what works best for you. Basically, with almost anything that isn't a universal truth, like the top speed golf system, these are things that you just gotta, you got to see for yourself. It's a personal preference, typically, type of thing. So that's what I'd recommend doing, and work on that. Work on the things that matter the most in the golf swing, and you'll see much better results. So we're after 10 now. And I apologize I wasn't able to get to everyone's questions, but join me again tomorrow, Thursday afternoon, and we'll be here. And I'll be here to answer your questions at that time. Again, thanks everybody for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.